If your Betta is suffering from fin rot, then you need to act quickly. While fin rot is extremely common and treatable, if left unchecked, it can prove to be fatal. This complete guide on how to treat fin rot in bettas is going to teach you everything you need to know to give your Betta a fighting chance. So without further ado, here is everything you need to know about treating fin rot in bettas. What causes fin rot in bettas? Before you start treating fin rot, you should know what causes it. After all, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. The number one cause of fin rot in bettas, as well as fish, is poor water quality. Poor water quality is going to make your aquarium a breeding ground for bacteria, parasites and fungal infections. On top of this, poor water quality will also stress your Betta out, and over time this will weaken their immune system, making them more susceptible to fin rot. If you're not sure whether the water quality in your tank is bad, then ask yourself the following questions. Is the temperature of the tank under 78 degrees Fahrenheit? Does the water appear cloudy? Are there pieces of uneaten food or feces in the gravel? Are the ammonia, nitrite and nitrate levels too high? You should be aiming for ammonia and nitrate at 0 ppm and nitrate at 20 ppm, which is parts per million. If you notice any of these problems, then you need to start working on them ASAP. However, poor water quality isn't the only cause of fin rot. On top of this, fin rot can occur due to overfeeding or underfeeding. Inconsistent feeding can stress your Betta fish out, causing their immune system to weaken and increasing the possibility of fin rot occurring. Is fin rot fungal or bacterial? Believe it or not, fin rot can be fungal and bacterial, and once you know what to look for, you'll better be able to gauge which type of fin rot your Betta is suffering from. When your Betta is suffering from bacterial fin rot, it won't be even. Instead, it will appear uneven and cause the rotting to look more ragged. The bacteria that causes this type of fin rot often causes damage when your Betta's immune system is weakened, and it may have been in the water the whole time. If your Betta is suffering from fungal fin rot, then the rot will appear more even across the fins. On top of this, you may notice a white edge on your Betta's fins. However, don't confuse this with white spots, which could signify ick, another infection. Once again, fungal fin rot can strike Betta when your Betta's immune system is weakened. As you've probably guessed by now, stress can also cause fin rot. When high stress levels are combined with poor water quality, poor diet or injury, then the result can often be fin rot of one kind or another. So what are the symptoms of fin rot? Before you learn how to treat fin rot in bettas, you also need to be sure that it's fin rot that they're suffering from and not something else. You already know that the most common signs are fins that appear receding or rotten, but what other signs are there? If you catch fin rot in the early stage, it's only going to be mild and your Betta should make a full recovery. The common symptoms of mild fin rot are fins that are just slightly darker in colour, the tips may be changing colour to brown, grey or white. As well as this, the edges may just be beginning to appear tattered and worn. The tips may also look irritated, red or sore. And most importantly, the rot won't appear to be anywhere near your Betta's body. However, if they're suffering from major fin rot, then you will need to act quickly. Major fin rot is going to weaken the immune system of your fish even more and make it more susceptible to other infections and diseases. Major fin rot often has these symptoms. The fins have receded dangerously close to the body. At times, you may notice whole clumps of fin falling off at once instead of a gradual change. The discoloration of the fin at this point will be incredibly dark. You will be able to clearly notice the fins are starting to die off. The fins may also begin to be covered in white fuzz, and oftentimes they'll have red spots on them. And lastly, your Betta may be suffering from severe fin rot or body rot. If fin rot has progressed all the way to body rot, then you're going to have to work extremely hard to save your Betta. Symptoms of body rot are the fins have receded completely to the body. Your Betta's body is beginning to rot away. Where the beginning of the fins used to be, there may be white fuzz. And other less notable symptoms of fin rot include lethargy and loss of appetite. So how do you treat fin rot in bettas? Treating fin rot in bettas is going to be easier the earlier you catch it. The first step is to consider whether it's necessary to move your Betta to a quarantine tank. If your Betta lives in a tank over 2 gallons or with anything else living, including plants, then you should quarantine it as soon as possible. By quarantining your Betta, you're going to reduce the risk of fin rot spreading. It also causes less stress for your other fish, who would otherwise have to deal with more water changes. And lastly, if you're using medicine, it may have a negative effect on the plant life and fish living in the tank. What medicine is best? The Betta fin rot treatment that you plan on using will depend on the severity of the condition. As well as this, treatment may also depend on whether your Betta is alone in a tank or housed with other fish. If this is the case, it's obviously important to keep the treatment as non-invasive as possible. Using aquarium salt for better fin rot. You may have heard of using aquarium salt for fin rot before, and that's because it works, especially for bettas. Some medications cause damage to a betta's labyrinth organ, which it needs to breathe. While the introduction of aquarium salt could stress your betta out, when used correctly, it's not going to damage your fish. However, just like all medications, it should be used only when necessary, and there are a few things you need to remember. You should never use aquarium salt for more than 10 days at a time. Obviously, it's not supposed to be in the fish tank, and prolonged exposure can cause problems, like kidney and liver damage. You should always use the correct dosage, which you'll find on the product. And remember, while aquarium salt is incredibly effective, it's not going to work in the most severe cases of fin rot, and it's going to be far less effective in low quality water. If your betta is suffering from mild fin rot, then the treatment will be a little bit different. If your betta is suffering from mild fin rot, then it may not even be necessary to treat the fin rot directly. As you've learned already, fin rot predominantly comes from poor water conditions. This means that in some cases it's viable to clean the tank and perform a water change. Before doing anything, you're going to need to make sure the temperature and pH of the tank are adequate. Your tank should be between 76 to 78 degrees Fahrenheit, with a pH as close to 7 as possible. Once all these parameters have been met, you should do a 50% water change. So change 50% of the water from your tank and replace it with conditioned tap water. Next step is to clean everything in the tank. Use a gravel vacuum to rid the gravel of any debris that can harbour or encourage bacteria to grow. This can be things like old food and feces. If you're using a filter in your tank, you should also clean it in the tank. This is going to help keep the good bacteria in the filter and the water, which is beneficial. If you're housing a lot of fish in your tank and you feel like the poor water conditions are being caused because of a high bioload, then you should consider moving some fish to another tank. In cases of mild fin rot, this can often be enough to cure it. You should keep an eye on your fish over the coming weeks to see if things are improving or getting worse. You should also check the water to make sure the pH and temperature are staying solid, as well as checking to make sure ammonia, nitrites and nitrates aren't becoming too high. If you notice that your betta's fin rot isn't getting any better, or if it's getting worse, then it's time to move on to another method of treating fin rot. If your betta is suffering from major fin rot, then keeping your aquarium clean isn't going to be enough. At this point, a stronger treatment is required, and you should isolate your betta if it hasn't been already. The first thing you'll need to do is move your betta to a quarantine tank. The next step is to clean the filter in your show tank to help preserve the good bacteria. Once you've done this, empty 100% of the water from the tank and clean everything with hot water. If you need to wash your plants, then use warm water instead. Once you've done this, place everything back into the tank and refill it with conditioned water. Next, mix aquarium salt with conditioned water in a separate container. Once it's fully dissolved, then you can add it to your quarantine tank. You'll need to do a 100% water change every day and make sure that you never add aquarium salt to the same water twice. Do this every day for a week and monitor how your betta is doing. After a week, if you begin to see improvements, then you know the method is working. If your betta is suffering from severe fin rot or body rot, then aquarium salt will no longer do the job. At this point, you're going to have to use stronger medication. This includes API Pemafix, which is antifungal, and API Furan 2, which is an antibacterial. Once again, move your betta to a quarantine tank, only this time it's vital you keep the water oxygenated. You can use an air stone or bubbler. Strong antibiotics can often remove a lot of the oxygen, making it hard for your fish to breathe. Just like before, completely clean everything in your main tank and fill it with conditioned water, and make sure the water parameters are back to normal. Then, administer the recommended doses of medication to your betta. You should pick the medication based on whether the rot is fungal or bacterial. And whatever you do, don't stop the dosages early. Even if your betta is showing signs of recovery, you have to follow the instructions exactly. Remember that you should also be doing 100% water changes before dosing your betta again, and once the treatment is over, acclimatise your betta, then add him back to the original tank. Remember, when your betta is recovering from body rot, you should take anything out of the aquarium that can cause damage to his fins. They're going to be incredibly delicate until fully healed. If you can, try to keep your betta fish away from others until he is healed completely. Using strong medications is incredibly stressful for your betta. At this stage of fin rot, it's quite possible that your betta will not survive. How can you tell if fin rot is getting better? Now that you know how to treat fin rot in bettas, the next step is identifying when symptoms are improving. After all, you don't want to prematurely stop treating your fish or overtreat them. You're not going to tell instantly if your Betta's fin rot is improving, but rather you should monitor your fish over time. If you notice the fins are regressing further into the body, then you may need to use a stronger treatment. However, here are the most common signs that fin rot is improving. You may notice that the white edges around your fish are disappearing or have disappeared. If the fin rot was more severe, you may begin to see a clear membrane on the fins, a sign that the fin is regrowing. The fins and tail should start to look better, they'll be less ragged and more healthy looking. If there was any dark discoloration in the fins, then it should be turning back to its original colour. All of these are positive and show that your Betta is on the mend. However, even if you see these signs, you should still keep dosing your fish until the medication cycle is complete. Stopping the cycle early may cause the fin rot to come back, and it may be even more resistant to medication. Do fins grow back after fin rot? The good news is that in most cases, the fins will grow back after fin rot. In some of the more severe cases, the fins may never grow back, but oftentimes a Betta would not survive anyway. When you notice the fin growing back, you should do everything you can to encourage it. This includes taking anything sharp out of the tank which your Betta can catch or cut. And most importantly, you must keep your water as clean as possible to help the healing process, as well as reduce the chance of fin rot. You should see a noticeable difference a month after your Betta's fin. A Betta's fin grows at about the same rate as your finger. So if the fin rot is severe, it may take a matter of months before the fin is healed. Sometimes the fin won't grow back to the same colour either. It could be a few shades darker. Is fin rot contagious to other fish? Fin rot is extremely contagious. Once you know that the bacterial or fungus that causes fin rot is in the tank, you're going to have to do a 100% water clean to get rid of it, as well as scrubbing everything in your tank properly to clean the filter. Once you've completely cleaned your tank, you should monitor all your fish to start looking for symptoms. If you do see any of the symptoms, then you should follow the steps I mentioned earlier. Can fin rot kill a Betta? If left untreated, fin rot can be fatal to Betta. The moment you notice fin rot occurring, you need to act immediately. In extreme cases, fin rot can lower the life expectancy of fish for a matter of years. If you think your fish has this level of fin rot, then sometimes it's better to leave it. How do you prevent fin rot? If you're worried about your beautiful Betta getting fin rot, then don't, because the good news is that it's extremely preventable. Here are a few of the best things you can do to prevent fin rot. Make sure that you're cleaning your tank regularly. If you have a smaller tank, then you should clean it every 3 to 5 days. If you have a bigger tank, then you only have to clean it once a week. The more water your tank holds, the less you'll have to clean it, because it's harder for water conditions to change dramatically. If your tank is over 5 gallons, then you should aim to do a 25% water change or higher every week. If your Betta is living with fish, then you need to make sure that your tank isn't overcrowded. Overcrowded tanks increase the bioload. The bioload is any organic matter that a fish produces, and you can imagine, the higher the bioload, the more risk of bad bacteria growing in the tank. Make sure you're feeding your Betta high quality food. Low quality food can increase how stressed your Betta is, which in turn can use a filter in your tank to help cycle the water. Just make sure that it's not too powerful and it's going to stress your Betta out. You should also use the gravel vacuum to clean the old food and pieces of debris from the bottom of your tank. If you notice that other fish are nipping your Betta's fins, you should separate them from each other. Damaged fins are more susceptible to fin rot. And obviously, try to handle your Betta as much as possible. I hope this comprehensive